Hello everyone, welcome back to another one of John's never-ending list of random things to do. And for today's video, I will be working on my 1985 Toyota Celica Supra. If you take a look at this trim here, you'll notice that it's not even mounted down. Would you look at that? If someone were to try to roll the window up or down, it'd be flying all over the place. Well, let's get this fixed today. I'll start by removing these two plastic pieces right here. Now moving to the top, remove this Phillips screw right here, then remove the trim. Now working on down, you have 4 big screws located in these areas. Go ahead and remove all 4 of these screws. The 2 at the top are easily accessible. Now you have to remove the courtesy light. There should be 1 screw located right behind it as well. As you can see, mine is missing. Now the last screw is located right behind here. Just pull this piece down and remove it. So that should be all the screws holding the door panel. Now you'll want to put your fingers down in here and just pull the panel off. The last piece you want to remove is this harness. Alright, so let's take a look at this switch here. I'm glad I pulled it off. I didn't even know I was missing a screw right here. Another issue too is, the switch is all faded. Look at that. It looks horrible. So if you didn't already know, this trim is actually 2 pieces. So with one hand holding the switch, you'll want to gently peel the upper trim off, being careful to not break anything. I also found it easier to work on the wider end. So this side is already broken, but that's not an issue. And this side has this dimple. You'll want to use this dimple as a guide for when you're drilling a hole. Now you don't have to remove the switch, but I'll be removing mine so I can clean it up. Now if you do remove your switch and you forget which way it goes back in, don't worry, it only fits one way. So if you put it back in the wrong way, the holes don't even align. Now if you put it back the right way, it aligns right up. I then masked up my switch, cleaned it up with alcohol, and I'll be touching it up with a few layers of spray paint. The reason why I sprayed this first is because I can let it dry while I work on other stuff. Now I can move on to drilling a hole through this trim. I started with a small bit first, and I used this dimple as a guide. I finished off the hole with a 1364 bit. My hardware choice was a 832 flathead machine screw. It fits perfectly in the hole I just drilled, but the head sticks out too far. To fix that, I used an 1132 bit to taper the mounting surface of the trim. You'll want to be very careful and apply as little pressure as possible. If you apply too much pressure, you'll find yourself shooting a hole right through your trim. As you're removing material, it's very important that you keep testing the fitment, so you'll want to end up with something looking like this. Now working on the other end, since it was already broken, I guesstimated that the hole was right here, and I ended up with something looking like this. To expand the hole on the trim, all I did was drill into a 2x4 just a bit. Once I reached a certain depth, I stopped applying pressure to the drill, and I just applied pressure to the trim against the drill bit. When I went to taper the surface of the trim, I applied as little pressure as possible to the drill, and I didn't hold the trim tightly. That way if it got caught, it wouldn't break the trim. So here we're performing the test fitting, and that looks really good. Another cheap alternative is to use plastic anchors. I would not recommend using this method, but let's give it a shot. When I inserted the anchor, it fit very tightly in the hole, and it just barely slides in. I ended up having to use a needle nose to pull the rest of it in. I also went on ahead and did the other side. When I attempted to put in a screw, it was threading in just fine. Then at a certain point, the anchor just kept spinning, and the screw wasn't going in anymore. So I decided to remove this trim from the door panel. To do so, you have to remove these hardware on the back side of the panel. I started by removing this retainer. Using one hand to apply pressure from the back side, you give yourself a small gap to slide in your tool. Once your tool is in place, don't just pry it out. You might break this piece. But instead, just walk it out. Wiggle it back and forth and it'll just pop out. Now you'll want to remove the two 10mm nuts. With all of the hardware removed, just grip onto the handle like so, and it'll just pop off. This hook is located at the top. You'll want to unhook it, and just slide the trim up and out of the way. Alright, now we have easier access to these anchors so we can screw them down. Once you're done, it'll look something like this. Then you'll just apply your top trim over it. I highly do not recommend this method, but it was worth a try. Another method is to use a size M4 rivet nut, and you'll also want to grab a set of M4 screws. It fits easily into the hole, and once you've seated it properly, you just rivet it into place. This is pretty much a permanent fix. The downside to this is, not everyone can afford a rivet gun, but if you can, it'll be really useful for other projects. Now this last method is our budget repair. These hardware can be picked up at your local hardware store. Now all there is left to do is mount your trim into place. I screwed one side in, but not completely. Then I worked on the other side, and I screwed this side in completely. Then I went back to the other side and screwed it all the way down. By doing this, you ensure your trim is seated properly. So checking to make sure everything is looking good, and man, that looks really good. If you didn't notice, I used a set of nylon locking nuts. If you live in an area where it gets super hot, you might not want to get these. You might want to get the regular machine nuts. To ensure it doesn't get loose and back out, you're going to have to use two nuts. The second one will act as your jam nut. You can also apply thread lock if you have any. And if you don't have thread lock, you can also use nail polish. Once you've applied your applications, just screw it down into place. Now it's time to pop the cover in place. You'll want to slide this side in first because you can't even see the clips. Once you have done so, flip it over and pop this side back into place. If you remove your switch, now would be a good time to reinstall it. And remember, it only fits one way, so if you put it in the wrong way, the holes won't align. There we go, this is the right way. I was lucky enough to have some extra screws with the same thread. Now all you have to do is screw it down. Alright, this is looking really good. Moving on to reinstalling this trim onto the door panel. You'll want to start with this hook, and it hooks right into this hole. So that's the first thing we're going to do, hook it into the hole. And once you have done so, slide the two studs where you removed the 10mm nuts back to its position. If your trim is loose in this area, all you have to do is apply pressure to the hook. Now you can reinstall the two 10mm nuts. Be careful to not over tighten them. All you need to do is snug it down. For this retainer, all you have to do is place it into its position, put your hand on the other side, and using your 10mm socket, apply pressure, and it'll just pop into place. Now the door panel is ready to be reinstalled. Start by reinstalling the harness first. Follow that up by reinstalling the entire door panel. You want to start at the top first, then make sure your retainers align. Make sure you have access to this cable, and once you have done so, align the retainers and pop them back into place. Now this trim can be reinstalled. And follow that up by reinstalling the screw. Remember to not over tighten it, or you'll crack your trim. Last of all, install the 4 big screws, starting with the 2 at the top, since they're the easiest. Then pop the plastic pieces back into place. If you remembered, I was missing the screw, but since I took all the trims apart, I found it sitting somewhere inside the panel, so I get to reinstall this screw. Follow this up by reinstalling the courtesy light. Plug it in and screw it down. And remember to not over tighten it, otherwise you'll crack your lens. Last of all, reinstall the last big screw. Now let's have one final look at the door panel. Let's check to see if the trim moves around. No, it's not even budging. It's on there really good. So that concludes this project. I hope you guys found this video helpful. If you did and you liked it, go ahead and give me a thumbs up. And if you're not subscribed yet, maybe even consider subscribing. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you guys for the next random project.